and her glasses flashed furiously. "How dare you? You might have broken your neck!" "It wasn't his fault, Professor. Be quiet, Miss Patil." "But Malfoy—" "That's enough, Mr. Weasley. Potter, follow me now." Harry caught sight of Malfoy, Crabbe and Goyle's triumphant faces as he left, walking numbly in Professor McGonagall's wake as she strode towards the castle. He was going to be expelled. He just knew it. He wanted to say something to defend himself, but there seemed to be something wrong with his voice. Professor McGonagall was sweeping along without even looking at him. He had to jog to keep up. Now he'd done it. He hadn't even lasted 2 weeks. He'd be packing his bags in 10 minutes. What would the Dursleys say when he turned up on the doorstep? Up the front steps, up the marble staircase inside, and still Professor McGonagall didn't say a word to him. She wrenched open doors and marched along corridors with Harry trotting miserably behind her. Maybe she was taking him to Dumbledore. He thought of Hagrid, expelled but allowed to stay on as a gamekeeper. Perhaps he could be Hagrid's assistant. His stomach twisted as he imagined it, watching Ron and the others becoming wizards while he stumped around the grounds carrying Hagrid's bag. Professor McGonagall stopped outside a classroom. She opened the door and poked her head inside. "Excuse me, Professor Flitwick, could I borrow wood for a moment?" Wood? Thought Harry, bewildered. Was wood a cane she was going to use on him? But Wood turned out to be a person, a burly fifth-year boy who came out of Flitwick's class looking confused. "Follow me, you two," said Professor McGonagall, and they marched on up the corridor, Wood looking curiously at Harry. "In here." Professor McGonagall pointed them into a classroom, which was empty except for Peeves, who was busy writing rude words on the blackboard. "Out, Peeves!" she barked. Peeves threw the chalk into a bin, which clanged loudly, and then he swooped out, cursing. Professor McGonagall slammed the door behind him and turned to face the two boys. "Potter, this is Oliver Wood. Wood, I've found you a seeker." Wood's expression changed from puzzlement to delight. "Are you serious, Professor?" "Absolutely," said Professor McGonagall crisply. "The boy's a natural. I've never seen anything like it. Was that your first time on a broomstick, Potter?" Harry nodded silently. He didn't have a clue what was going on, but he didn't seem to be being expelled, and some of the feeling started coming back into his legs. "He caught that thing in his hand after a 50-foot dive," Professor McGonagall told Wood. "Didn't even scratch himself. Charlie Weasley couldn't have done it." Wood was now looking as though all his dreams had come true at once. "Ever seen a game of Quidditch, Potter?" he asked excitedly. "Wood's captain of the Gryffindor Quidditch team," Professor McGonagall explained. "He's just the build for a seeker too," said Wood, now walking around Harry and staring at him. "Light, speedy. We'll have to get him a decent broom, Professor. A Nimbus 2000 or a Clean Sweep 7, I'd say." "I shall speak to Professor Dumbledore and see if we can't bend the first-year rule. Heaven knows we need a better team than last year, flattened in that last match by Slytherin. I couldn't look Severus Snape in the face for weeks." Professor McGonagall peered sternly over her glasses at Harry. "I want to hear you're training hard, Potter, or I may change my mind about punishing you." And she suddenly smiled. "Your father would have been proud," she said. "He was an excellent Quidditch player himself." "You're joking!" It was dinner time. Harry had just finished telling Ron what had happened when he'd left the grounds with Professor McGonagall. Ron had a piece of steak and kidney pie halfway to his mouth, but he'd forgotten all about it. "Seeker," he said, "but first years never. You must be the youngest house player in about—" "A century," said Harry, shoveling pie into his mouth. He felt particularly hungry after all the excitement of the afternoon. "Wood told me." Ron was so amazed, so impressed, he just sat and gaped at Harry. "I start training early next week," said Harry, "only don't tell anyone. Wood wants to keep it a secret." Fred and George Weasley now came into the hall, spotted Harry and hurried over. "Well done," said George in a low voice. "Wood told us. We're on the team too. Beat us." "I tell you, we're going to win that Quidditch Cup for sure this year," said Fred. "We haven't won since Charlie left, but this year's team is going to be brilliant. You must be good, Harry. Wood was almost skipping when he told us." "Anyway, we've got to go. Lee Jordan reckons he's found a new passageway out of the school. Bet it's that one behind the statue of Gregory the Smarmy that we found in our first week. See ya." Fred and George had hardly disappeared when someone far less welcome turned up. Malfoy, flanked by Crabbe and Goyle. "Having a last meal, Potter? When are you getting the train back to the Muggles?" "You're a lot braver now you're back on the ground and you've got your little friends with you," said Harry, coolly. There was, of course, nothing little at all about Crabbe and Goyle, but as the high table was full of teachers, neither of them could do more than crack their knuckles and scowl. "I'd take you on my own any time," said Malfoy. "Tonight, if you want. Wizard's duel. Once only, no contact." "What's the matter, Potter? Never heard of a wizard's duel before, I suppose?" "Of course he has," said Ron, suddenly wheeling round. "I'm his second. Who's yours?" Malfoy looked at Crabbe and Goyle, sizing them up. "Crabbe," he said. "Midnight, all right. We'll meet you in the trophy room. That's always unlocked." When Malfoy had gone, Ron and Harry looked at each other. "What is a wizard's duel?" said Harry. "And what do you mean you're my second?" "Well, a second's there to take over if you die," said Ron casually, getting started at last on his cold pie. Catching the look on Harry's face, he added quickly, "But people only die in the proper duels, you know, with real wizards. The most you and Malfoy will be able to do is send sparks at each other. Neither of you knows enough magic to do any real damage. I bet he expected you to refuse anyway." "And what if I wave my wand and nothing happens?" "Throw it away and punch him in the nose," Ron suggested. "Excuse me?" They both looked up. It was Hermione Granger. "Can't a person eat in peace in this place?" said Ron. Hermione ignored him and spoke to Harry. "I couldn't help overhearing what you and Malfoy were saying." "Bet you could," Ron muttered. "And you mustn't go wandering around the school at night. Think of all the points you'll lose Gryffindor if you're caught, and you're bound to be. It's really very selfish of you." "And it's really none of your business," said Harry. "Goodbye," said Ron. All the same, it wasn't what you'd call the perfect end to the day, Harry thought, as he lay awake much later listening to Dean and Seamus falling asleep. Never wasn't back from the hospital wing. Ron had spent all evening giving him advice such as, "If he tries to curse you, you'd better dodge it, because I can't remember how to block them." There was a very good chance they were going to get caught by Filch or Mrs. Norris, and Harry felt he was pushing his luck, breaking another school rule today. On the other hand, Malfoy's sneering face kept looming up out of the darkness. This was his big chance to beat Malfoy face to face. He couldn't miss it. 11:30, Ron muttered at last. "We'd better go." They pulled on their dressing gowns, picked up their wands, and crept across the tower room, down the spiral staircase, and into the Gryffindor common room. A few embers were still glowing in the fireplace, turning all the armchairs into hunched black shadows. They had almost reached the portrait hole when a voice spoke from the chair nearest them. "I can't believe you're going to do this, Harry." A lamp flickered on. It was Hermione Granger, wearing a pink dressing gown and a frown. "You!" said Ron furiously. "Go back to bed." "I almost told your brother," Hermione snapped. "Percy, he's a prefect. He'd have put a stop to this." Harry couldn't believe anyone could be so interfering. "Come on," he said to Ron. He pushed open the portrait of the fat lady and climbed through the hole. Hermione wasn't going to give up that easily. She followed Ron through the portrait hole, hissing at them like an angry goose. "Don't you care about Gryffindor? You only care about yourselves. I don't want Slytherin to win the House Cup, and you'll lose all the points I got from Professor McGonagall for knowing about switching spells." "Go away." "All right, but I warned you. Just you remember what I said when you're on the train home tomorrow. You're so—" But what they were, they didn't find out. Hermione had turned to the portrait of the fat lady to get back inside and found herself staring at an empty painting. The fat lady had gone on a nighttime visit and Hermione was locked out of Gryffindor Tower. "Now what am I going to do?" she asked shrilly. "That's your problem," said Ron. "We've got to go. We're going to be late." They hadn't even reached the end of the corridor when Hermione caught up with them. "I'm coming with you," she said. "You are not. Do you think I'm going to stand out here and wait for Filch to catch me? If he finds all three of us, I'll tell him the truth, that I was trying to stop you, and you can back me up." "You've got some nerve," said Ron loudly. "Shut up, both of you," said Harry sharply. "I heard something." It was a sort of snuffling. "Mrs. Norris," breathed Ron, squinting through the dark. It wasn't Mrs. Norris. It was Neville. He was curled up on the floor, fast asleep, but jerked suddenly awake as they crept nearer.